Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
If you are not moving forward and exploring and learning and discovering, you are falling backwards. We want peace, and we want a future that trends with less violence.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low.
Know thy enemy, know thyself. And if you are deceived in your own arrogance and your own dominance of the past, that what you did in the past is sufficient to win in the future, eventually you're going to be a dead man. And this Constitution that America has is the best hope of humanity. We have the creativity. God has given us the brains to create our future, to build it. The way to do that is not to ignore a new domain and new technologies. How do we use this knowledge God has given us to glorify God and not let evil people use it as a weapon against good people? We don't have to be victims. Technology does change fate. Hey, well, welcome everybody to Space Revolution. And Brad, thank you for co-hosting with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to a fun space-filled adventure.
Each one of them is. And for those listeners tuning in, the purpose of this program is to talk about how these inventions that are on the cusp of our lives will change our lives forever, and help us all guide those inventions and those technologies for good, and not for evil. So the awareness of people who are awake to guide our politicians and to guide our technology for the prosperity, health, security, and peaceful purposes of the human race is really important. And you can only do that if you know what's going on.
Yep, without a doubt. And I feel like most of my life, it's felt like this unattainable place, right? Space and a couple moon landings and, the ISS and some things, but it was just something that we would never see in our lifetimes. And like you mentioned to me when we were talking prior to this, it feels like it's ramping up exponentially, where this actually might happen in our lifetimes, and even bigger things. I think today we're going to talk about, you're talking like materials, right? And mining, and which, well, that will revolutionize Earth as well, which is the goal, right? Humanity is here on Earth, but then it could also open up us being in space. And I think it's more than the movies. I always saw it as more than just, hey, we're going to be in some space station somewhere. No, it will revolutionize human life. And why I geek out about it. I'm going to try and play it cool today, but I absolutely love this stuff. So
it's important. One of the purposes of this podcast is to give people some homework assignments, but also help us think through the questions we need to be asking as the people with the power. I mean, we have the power to shape our future and to build it in the image of what we want. And that means not letting politicians build it. It means not letting companies build it. It means those politicians, those companies are essential, but they need to be guided by the moral foundation and compass of people who love other people and love their God. Otherwise, any technology can be a weapon. And so for, again, the listeners that are new, this is, to inspire people to understand what is coming. Is really important. That sense of wonder that a young child looks up into a dark night sky and sees the stars and the moon and thinks to themselves, wow, what a magnificent tapestry. What role do I play in this? Where do I fit? What is my purpose? That's the wonder and awe that inspires what's so genius in our consciousness, this desire to explore and to discover. And that's what you're talking about. What we're seeing is the ability for the human race to explore the stars in a way we have never been able to do before. And it comes down to these technologies. So we tend to try to eat this elephant in small bite sizes here, and the three categories that listeners will see the pattern is we talk about an information silo, the revolution in information, which we already see in telecommunications, in the fact that your phone can now talk to a satellite instead of having to find a cell tower. We talk about the cylinder of energy, where we now can beam energy to Earth from space and the infinite sun's energy, or nuclear energy, or whatever kind of energy we want to beam. And then resources, we've talked about that. We're going to talk about today. But each of those pillars of prosperity, information, energy, and resource transformations, are really need to be for a purpose. And the purposes for me, and the way we're talking about it in this show, are the 8 essentials of life. And that's air, water, food, shelter, information, energy, transportation, and healthcare. You have those 8 essentials of life, and life is more prosperous, life is more secure, and life is healthier. And so that's kind of the rubric, or the framework for this show as we go through. And today we're going to talk about resources in space and what that means for shelter, meaning building structures so people can stay dry and warm or cool and protected from the elements, whether those elements are Mother Nature or other people. So that's kind of the show today, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail. But I'm glad that you're the co-host, because you are a builder. You are a man that understands construction. And so you will be very good at helping all of us ask the right questions here, meaning, where do we need to be suspicious, careful, demanding of our policy owners, politicians, and companies, so that this guides in a direction that uplifts the human condition.
Absolutely. And, I know that we're between the Space Force and NASA, that's where most of the attention towards space goes. But I like the idea of it not being relegated to just government agencies, but having a lot of outside influence. I like the idea of, like you're talking about, materials for construction, for shelter. Right now I live on a very scarcely populated island where you have to have a lot of outside influence to do anything here. And as a builder, I see the potentials, but it's not as capable as it would be something in the future, where, like you were saying, building things in space or being able to mine resources in space. I know, say, like something like concrete, right? All the things that make up concrete are in abundance right here on the planet. Like, you wouldn't need a super huge focus on that, but say stuff like iron ore, with an asteroid, what were they called? I was trying to look this up. M-type asteroids, the metallic asteroids, would probably be a #1 target to start opening that up, and then you can reintroduce that to Earth rather than completely depleting what is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me paint a picture for our audience of what is in the art of the possible, meaning the technology we have today, and when that technology is applied to space, what it could mean. And this is kind of in the category where when one invention happens, it opens the door for many other inventions. For example, Steve Jobs could have never invented the smartphone until the internet was invented. The internet's invention is what created the smartphone, and then created the information revolution, where now we have eyes and ears in every pocket where there's a cell phone. So the same thing is true in space. And the method, the analogy I've given in the past is with these asteroids that are near Earth, and to include the moon as a celestial body out there. There are asteroids closer to our Earth than the moon is because it's orbiting in the same orbital path as the sun, and 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 so it would be like having a continent the size of Africa within a day or so travel away, and we aren't doing anything with it. Those asteroids are made up of the same stardust as the Earth, and so you talked about concrete, but you can mine for anything that you mine for on Earth, anything. And we've already got the robotic miners, and they've been tested out in the mines of Africa and Asia and in America, and they're ready to go. I mean, we know we can send them into space, we can put them on an asteroid, and they can start mining the iron ore or the gold or the silver or whatever it is. And now, when you combine that reality, where we have the communication, the robotics, the artificial intelligence, and the mechanical systems to be able to mine the moon or mine asteroids. And now you can bring that material and you can either bring it back to Earth or you can start constructing in space. And so that's the next, that's where these elements fit together, meaning that the other resource in space is fuel in the form of water, because it's hydrogen and oxygen, which you can make into fuel. These asteroids are packed with ice. So you have the sun's energy as fuel. You have water, which is now hydrogen and oxygen, which is almost unlimited fuel in space. And now you can mine and 3D print, because that the miners, can turn it into the 3D printing powder for a 3D printer in space. So that gives people a sense for what you can do. And here's why it's important. In space, you have zero gravity. One of the major impediments of manufacturing with 3D printing is that the force of gravity crushes things, meaning it's a weight. And as you're trying to put together a molecular structure, zero gravity allows you to do that with tremendous precision at the molecular level in ways you cannot build on Earth. You can build differently in space. And this now can start providing affordable structures in space. And then we'll talk about how you get it to Earth in a minute. But that's the transformation, that's the revolution, where you can now, you don't have to, strip mine the Earth or scar the top of a mountain by cutting off the top and starting to mine the mountain because it's full of gold, platinum, rare earth, whatever it might be. You can mine asteroids now instead of the Earth and do the same thing.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. Anytime we can preserve this beautiful planet is the best. I know what you're saying with zero gravity. This is what, like, we're making semiconductors and stuff, right? Don't they try and get as microgravity, as close to zero gravity as they can to get the perfect mixes and, and get the best versions of that? And that would open that up. I mean, I know from construction too, if you take away all that friction, things that you need a massive crane to lift would only just take a little push or, a little guidance, then you could open up a whole field there. Now, as far as actually like going there and doing these things, do you think it's just a matter of breaking the ice? Like say for like back in the old world, right? They would sail around Europe and their continents, and they looked into Africa, but it wasn't until Christopher Columbus went across the ocean and found the New World that just opened up everything. And then everyone started coming over here. It was kind of like this burst of, as far as exploration goes. Do you think it's the same thing with space, where someone just has to break that ice and go mine an asteroid and all of a sudden everyone goes, oh, and obviously money rules the world. So they see the dollar signs and then it'll just explode.
Yes. It'll, it's interesting, the pattern of innovation. When you study the history of how innovation pops, it's drip, drip, flood. Let's take the airplane, for example. For years, people knew that we could theoretically fly or build an airplane that would fly, but nobody could figure out how to control it. So you had the kites and you had, all these other, funny contraptions until the Wright brothers figured out how to control it. And once they did, within literally months, everybody around the world was building airplanes. It was astounding to see. And so that's how the flood happens. And so it's going to happen here. The thing that has been slowing it down is that it's still expensive to get things up into space. But Elon Musk has broken the back of that problem. What he has done and what he is doing with Starship is bringing the price per kilogram that you deliver to space down so low that now these robotic companies, these mining companies can actually go and do this. And once they do it, then you're right. This is a commercial play. This is a market play, because all these people that are good business minds, business figures it out. The government will utilize it. They'll benefit from it. But it's the commercial market that is the big money. And that's where the investors will say, okay, and they'll start flooding it. And it goes back to this dynamic that I've said before, but is worth repeating. And that is, everybody loves innovation as long as it's been done before. And so because this is new and nobody's ever done it before, a lot of investors are cautious and they don't put the big money after it. That's where the government comes in, by putting some big money after it. But once the first ice is broken, if you will, once that glass ceiling is broken and people can see that this is not just feasible, but now the cost of manufacturing, once you build the infrastructure, the cost of manufacturing high quality construction material for shelters on Earth goes way down, because you have infinite energy in the sun and you have a hell of a cooling system in the deep space thermal sink. And now you can manage the 3D printing and the robotics in a way that lets you build a wall, for example, and the inside of that wall has molecular structures that make it resilient to any kind of detonation or attack from the outside, bulletproof, essentially. It makes it cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It allows for all the kinds of attributes that you would want a good shelter to have. And when you combine a lower cost manufacturing process in space that takes advantage of zero gravity and the energy sun and the cold of space, and you couple it with an infinite amount of fuel in the form of water and the sun's energy to charge capacitors and batteries, now with that fuel, you can align the descent of a structure you build. You could build a house in space, for example, down to every bolt and structure, perfectly integrated, that's insulated and resilient and the right size and shape, beautiful in structure, because you don't have to just have four walls. You can use 3D printing to make beautiful edifices, and beautiful structures. And then you could take that and you could bring it to Earth, and it doesn't have to come in with a heat shield. You can align it with the molecules of the air, and you can descend it down to Earth. And with the fuel, you can set it down as softly as you see Elon Musk landing his rockets, his reusable rockets, on the launch pad, right at the 0 point that you want it. So now a customer on an island somewhere in the middle of nowhere that wants a beautiful home can order the home. It can be built in space and can be delivered to the concrete pad in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and that's so huge. Again, where I live now, I grew up in New Jersey, where you order something on Amazon in the morning and it's there at night. Right now, I live in a place where we were laughing when I was like that. We were talking about the book that you're going to suggest for the episode, and you're like, well, you need to. You can't get it on audiobook. You have to order physically. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll read it in about a month when it gets here, right? That things take a while, especially in the winter. But the idea of being able to just drop things down is massive. And to speak to that with the reusable rocket, I remember when that happened, and especially just the more I think about it now, there's been a couple of years since the first, was it the Falcon 9 or whatever, the one that was. Now they have the mechanical arm, and now they're really going more and more with it. I know it was, people said that's cool when it happened. I don't think people realized how that's one of the most revolutionary things that's happened in our lifetimes. I mean, the idea that to reuse something, that is the propelling element, I think, to what we see in the space movies, right? What do you see? These things that when these Star Wars and stuff, and the ships are coming down, and the boosters they turn down almost exactly how pop, 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 and they
Yeah.
land. That just enabled all of that. Like that just made that a possibility. And like you're saying, you can land materials, you can send your miners up there and then actually have it come down without just destroying $1 billion ship every time you go into space. It's revolutionary, man.
Yeah, it is, and that's going to be a whole program. We're going to do a program on transportation, and it'll highlight what Elon Musk has done. That with supercomputing and enough fuel, you can make rockets reusable. They never were before. But the other thing most people don't realize is satellites right now are not reusable. In other words, a satellite is built by an artisan, and it goes up to do one job, and it does that job, and when it runs out of gas, it's space junk.
Yeah.
How stupid is that? So that's why I started Space Built. This company is we build reusable satellites where you can upgrade, modernize infinitely. They refuel, because it's got the logistics infrastructure. We're a logistics infrastructure company. And therefore we can have the garages where, it would be like buying a car off the lot and driving it until it ran out of gas and then burning it to the ground and going back to the lot to buy another car to come home. That's how we do space with satellites right now. So what Elon Musk did for reusable rockets, which dropped the cost precipitously, we're doing for satellites, where now you can have affordable satellites and they aren't billions of dollars. So it is a revolution. You're right. But the point I want to drive home to the audience is what this is going to mean for your life. So where I grew up in Africa, for example, or in Sudan, where there are millions of people huddled in locations where they have no structures, or it's two pieces of cardboard and a piece of zinc over the top of them, and they live in squalor. Imagine America putting Americans to work, doing the construction and the labor of building these structures. Because what Americans will do is they'll build the components that go up into space. They'll build the robotics that build it in space. They'll build the software and hardware that put all this stuff together. They'll build the stuff that mines the asteroids and assembles the structures in space, and then uses the fuel to bring that structure down as soft as a feather. So now you could have a structure that's custom built for a family in Sudan that doesn't have shelter, or a person that wants to live in the Hindu Kush at 20,000 feet. And we can deliver it right on the pad. All they have to do is scrape out the pad. We deliver it, and there's ways of anchoring it so that it can withstand the wind. Imagine the explosion in people being able to live anywhere they want when you can provide adequate, and not just adequate, but superior shelter built in a way you cannot build on planet Earth. You cannot build on planet Earth because you're building in zero gravity.
Oh my gosh, that changed the whole world. And the money's there, right? We see they allot tons of money for these places. Maybe, I don't know about specifically Sudan, but places abroad. And then you're like, well, what's this money being used for? They're exactly the same as they were 10 years ago. And I'm like, well, that's funding the transgender clinic in Uganda. And you're like, what? If you imagine using that money for something actually useful as such, it would revolutionize the whole world, obviously. Now, do you think we'll be populating space at some point? I don't know, like maybe like an ISS type, but bigger, or maybe even on the moon.
So this is where the resource conversation also gets interesting, because it is always valuable to have a human being in the environment where you're exploring and discovering, because of the requirement for creativity, ingenuity, vision, and problem solving. And problem solving in a way where something happens that was never expected, never programmed, couldn't be anticipated. So you will need human beings. What I want to do is I want to design a future where going into space to do work like that is not dangerous for the human body. And the beautiful thing about that is so possible. So, for example, people think about a habitat on the moon. which is fine if you want to have a habitat on the moon or on Mars. But the reality is, if you're going to be in a habitat on the moon, you will not be in 1G, meaning it will not feel like Earth. Now, you can build a habitat that protects you from the radiation and has the energy source to heat it and cool it, and a water system that gives you humidity in the air and fresh water that recycles, through the system. You can have all of that, but the gravitational force on your bones, on your blood stream, on all the physiological impacts of less than 1G or more than 1G for that matter is problematic for the health of human beings. But there is no reason why you cannot build a spaceship, meaning a habitat that rotates, kind of think of a tire rotating or a hula hoop rotating, and people live at the base of that rotation. So it feels like 1G all the time. Just like if you started walking east on Earth, you're on a ball. And if you kept walking, you'd eventually come back to the same point. But the whole time you feel like it's, you're just standing, you're not upside down on the bottom of the Earth. The same is true in inversion, where if you're at the inside of a tire in space and that tire is rotating at the right velocity, then you will feel like 1G. And if you walked, you would be walking up and around that tire, but at the top of the tire, you wouldn't feel like you're upside down. You'd feel like you're right side up. Same phenomenon. Okay. So now you can have a spaceship that has 1G. So it feels just like Earth. You can have the walls of that spacecraft that lets in light, but not radiation. So you feel like the sun, you feel the sun's beautiful light, and you can grow plants and animals. You can have a water system that helps protect you and feed the water to the animals, the plants, and to you and to the humidity in the air. So it's comfortable. So there's no reason why we cannot build in space with these resources a habitat that can travel anywhere. So you can say, hey, let's go visit the moon today. You go there, let's do some work on the moon. Okay, let's go to Mars and visit Mars and do some work there. Let's go back down to low Earth orbit and do some work in low Earth orbit. Or let's just go back down to Earth and visit family. You can be mobile and have a habitat in space without having to compromise your health, except for the rare time you need a human being to go down to the moon or to Mars to look at something or to troubleshoot. But with robotics and laser communications and virtual and augmented reality, you can literally put the engineer, the scientist, or the problem solver virtually in the environment to look around and say, okay, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, that'd be huge, because I know, unlike the ISS and stuff, they have to cycle people out, right? It actually has a toll on their body because they're not creating that. They're literally just floating there. So, yeah, that would be massive. I like what you're saying about harnessing the sun's energy or using the sun while we're out there. Obviously, you're going to be a little closer to it. Do you think there is a way to harness the sun's energy out in space and then bring it back to Earth in like a massive scale?
Yes. And in fact, if you listen to the show on energy, we talk about that. So
we did. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But for example, just to give this audience kind of a little tickle of that, then you can go back and listen to those episodes, or you can listen to future episodes because we're going to bore into that. But the Air Force Research Lab has been doing experiments on the X-37, which is the space plane, the secret space plane. And this is all unclassified, demonstrating the beaming of the sun's infinite energy and taking that energy, converting it to a radio wave that is as safe as you walking out in the sunshine. In fact, the radiation of that radio wave is about a quarter of what you're feeling when you're walking out into sunshine. And the human body is made for the sunshine radiation. That's just a form of radiation. So you're beaming it down to Earth, and you can beam down almost an infinite amount of energy to any spot on the Earth to create electricity. You turn that radio wave back into electricity. We know how to do it. We've demonstrated it. And a month ago, Japan just announced its major success at demonstrating a business case of beaming the sun's energy to Earth in the form of electricity on Earth.
Huh, that's massive. I mean, well, one of the things, obviously, we discuss a lot of, mostly all politics on this channel. And one of the things I've noticed over the years is that almost a lot of this strife, when you really just take it down to the base level, is hoarding resources, is big people trying to hoard resources and energy. And so if you can take that and make both of these abundant and almost make it, accessible just by the people, cutting out these huge conglomerate governments and stuff, I feel like that would actually diminish a lot of the strife on this planet as well. It would bring in a new level of peace.
Well, there's no question that when you increase the pie, so as we tap into the space revolution and you increase the pie where there's more resources, it does diminish conflict. And conflict revolves, as you said, around resources, energy, and water. Okay.
Yeah.
And information is the warfare. That's the battle space, is information. But you can never change human nature. So what happens in human nature when you study the history of conflict is that you break into a new opportunity where the pie gets larger, and then human nature comes in and people try to dominate it, monopolize it, use it as a weapon against you. And so this is why part of this show is reminding people that there is an interior portion of this journey, meaning it's not just about the technology, it's about you. And whether you believe in the infinite nature of the fact that we're moral creatures, and that our journey in life is only productive and meaningful if we believe in God, and we believe that God loves us, and we believe that we must love others as God loves us, and to say that unapologetically, because without morality, any technology, any civilization will perish. Our founding fathers have said this. It is in our Constitution. These principles that are enshrined in the Bible are manifested in the governance of our Constitution. That's why I say our Constitution is the great hope for mankind. And so back to your question, yes, increasing the pie, especially if America leads this revolution into the abundance of the resources in space, where it is guided by the principles in our Constitution, where everybody has free will and you have rights, you have your privacy, your independence, your civil liberty, then we have a fighting chance of this resource bonanza creating a more peaceful future. But if we don't have those morals grounded in the foundation of this new economy, then war and violence can break out. And that's why President Trump is so importantly right at saying peace through strength. And the strength is the economy. The strength is guiding a new source of resources, energy, and information from space in a way that's responsible and mindful of human nature.
Yeah, I love how you bring it, back to our founding fathers and then back to Jesus, because this is two very, I think, somewhat misunderstood, but they're the most significant things, in the sub with the founding fathers. People kind of misconstrued the separation of church and state, but when you really go back and read what they were talking about and how this country was founded, it was 100% founded on the morals of Christianity. And with that in mind, and then obviously that goes back to Abby and I actually watched Passion of the Christ last night. It's the first time I've seen it since it was in the theater. So what was that, over 20 years ago?
Yeah.
And just taking in the weight of all that, and then also just in general, thinking about Jesus's doctrine. That was the revolution of morality. That was a lot of those concepts. So we say them now, and even I've some friends who are like atheists, and they're like, well, yeah, of course you do, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you feel that way because the world's been 2,000 years of this doctrine now, and you think it's just that's normal. Those were the most revolutionary ideas ever. So revolutionary. God actually had to come down himself and be like, dudes, this is what it needs to be right now, and you guys are totally getting it wrong. But it's all with that morality. I think we could take this next revolution while steeping it in that, and just propel the world. There will be nothing like it. I really believe that.
Well, this is why I'm so joyful about the future too, because it's all of these elements that kind of play together. It's not just one. For example, to your point, exactly. When you take the information revolution that we are experiencing, and that's why this series, Space Revolution, it starts with information. When the world can see what's going on and educate themselves into how evil people have enslaved us through taxation, inflation, old-fashioned evil action and blackmail. When people can see this, and you believe there are more good people than bad people, and then you give them more resources that are protected by an American Constitution that defends your right to benefit from the hard work you put into gaining those resources through the labor and the dignity of work. You're right. Now you have the potential with information coupled with more resources to be able to shine a light on evil actors. They run like cockroaches. They cannot hide like they have hidden in the industrial age. How did we get all of this crap on child trafficking and human trafficking across the globe without normal people that have a moral compass realizing it was going on? I mean, shame on us for not knowing it, but these are clever people, evil people that enslave others for their own benefit. And we have to rid that scourge from the human race. And information and resources and energy and the ability to provide this awareness is the first step to making sure we can shine a light on every evil corner, and no evil cockroach can hide anywhere on the planet, because everybody can phone a friend and reveal it to the whole human race. And as long as there's more good people than bad, we will crush those evil bastards in their footsteps.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I love what you're talking about with the renewable satellites, because that enables everything. The satellites having that connectivity enables that. I'm only talking to you via satellite internet because there's no infrastructure otherwise here for that. And right now it's the regular ones that are either crashing to Earth or becoming space junk periodically and have to be recycled. The idea that you can have a renewable, or even to fix satellites and then keep that as a consistent web to utilize that, to have us be able to, like you're saying, report anything at any time, to have where these people can't hide or can't walk the streets anymore is one. But then also when we take that leap to space, I'm sure that will involve even a wider net of satellites that are even made just for that area. And that enables everything. So the idea of that to me really excites me. And is this, are you talking about renewable satellites in the way of we will be able to continually repair them, or ones that kind of are almost autonomous that will just have way extended lifestyles?
No, it'll be like, imagine a car. A car is meaningless until there are roads and gas stations where you get a flat tire and you can get the tire fixed. Machines are machines and they break. And unexpected things happen, and you got to repair them and modernize them, upgrade them, recapitalize them. And so my company, for example, we build, the factory in space, the ability to assemble things in space and build large structures, build an assembly line, okay, to take the iron ore from an asteroid and turn it into a metal structure that then can be handed off to a tug that'll place it where you live. If you want, that's what I'm talking about, is the infrastructure. So now satellites can be large or small. They don't have to fit in the tiny tip of a rocket, which is what they have to do right now, because now you can send up the Lego blocks, or you can build it. You can 3D print the part in space using the asteroid's material and then assemble these large structures. And so any structure, whether it's a satellite or it's an assembly line or it's a refueling station, when something breaks, you fix it up there. You don't send something else up. You don't have to rebuild it. You just you fix it in space, and you have spare parts in space, whether they're built in space with in-space resources, or you build them on Earth and send them up to space. Either way, you are putting Americans to work doing this. And so this brings up actually another point about the space revolution that's really important. And I see this as a man who worked in the national security arena with countries all over the world. Okay. And these are, literally buddies of mine that were in the military. And in most other countries, the military and the political are like that. It's not so much in America, which is a good thing. You don't want politics and military, you want the military working for the politician that is elected by the people. Okay. But in other countries, the relationship is very, very close. And what they see is this space revolution as America's opportunity to save the rest of the world. In other words, people around the globe are feeling kind of a secular slowdown in the economy. Prices are going up. My kids, both college educated, working 2 jobs, can't afford a house. Everything is going in the opposite direction of where humanity should be going to make the next generation more prosperous, healthy, and secure than the last generation. And it's going in the opposite direction because of the big steel. Okay. And so to your point, the rest of the world is looking to America to lead us into this future of abundance, using space resources as the catalyst for a new economy that can bring useful and novel solutions to every person on the planet, whether it's a smart device to the tribal leader in Africa that can see what's going on around them now and communicate with the rest of the world and tell them about this tyrant or despot that's enslaving them, or whether it's water that you can now pull out of the air because you can have the energy from space to actually take advantage of the abundance of humidity that can be turned into drinking water if you have the energy. Now that water can be turned into food in places that don't have enough food. And now you've started pulling back on this starvation and thirst that happens in many places around the equator of the earth.
Well, yeah, well, I think that is, locally one of the most exciting things. That's what I was talking about, asking about Genesis and what that entails, because water, all the ancient civilizations, right? They were by bodies of water, because that is life. Water equals life. That's why that's why they get excited on planets and moons in space when they find a tiny molecule. It's just the most exciting thing, but it really equals life. And to be able to drop something in the middle of, say, an African village that is completely landlocked and away from this, and to give them renewable water or even shelter is life-changing. And it seems to be actually happening now. I guess I would ask kind of an offshoot question on that is, with this technology, we're saying, say you could give someone in a village a technology that makes him learn about the world, but also about the dictator that's taking him out. How do you retain your culture? Because I know with a lot of technology, especially here in America, you've seen we all had vibrant cultures that are now kind of melding together, and it's being lost a little as we're all becoming so connected. And I feel like that's a shame. Is there a way to retain that?
Yeah, there is. And in fact, I have a number of the colleagues I have are young geniuses. Okay. So there's a young genius that I talked to before this show. I talked to him before every show. And he was describing, this dynamic where the American people can build an entire economy and workforce, delivering to the rest of the world things they need, but in a way that allows them to retain their own culture. And this is part of the American genius. And this is where the American people, we as voters with our moral compass, that we imprint on the brain of the politician, that they are our slave, okay? And that they will do these things to put Americans to work, to make America wealthy, providing for security, wealth, and prosperity and health to all other people on the planet. And when we do it without strings attached, they maintain their own culture. I mean, you're right that technology can make it feel like the cultures blend, but with education, with the information device where you can teach people that your culture matters, okay? That what you eat, what you wear, the songs you sing, the way you relate to one another, what you believe is unique, it's beautiful, and that variety is the spice of life. Don't lose it. But here's some water, here's some information, here's some education, here's some energy, here are some resources, materials, and America goes to work lowering the cost so much and increasing the capability that people in that African tribe I grew up in can afford it. See? And that's what we did with computers. And Hughes was the great company that said, we are going to lower cost and increase capability. That's what Elon Musk is doing with transportation to space. He's lowering the cost and increasing the capability. That's what America can do for the rest of the world with regard to information that is trusted and true, energy that is abundant and cheap, and resources that are abundant and cheap and delivered to your doorstep at a price you can afford. This is what will change the human condition for the better if we harness our politicians to do what we tell them to do.
I love that. So to go off that, then, what do you think we should be asking our politicians specifically in regards to this to get this ball rolling even more than it already is?
Yeah. So let me use the Panama Canal as an example. The American people didn't ask Teddy Roosevelt and others to build it. He knew that if you could cut the cost in half of delivering things versus going around the Horn of South America or the Horn of Africa, if you could get through Panama, you cut the price in half, you cut the time in half, it would change the economy of the globe. And it did. But it took government money to build it. Now, there was tragedy where a lot of the men that went down there and women to build that canal died of malaria, died of snake bites, so there was tragedy involved. But we don't need to do that today. We have robotics that can work this in space in ways that are so unique, putting Americans to work. And so, we have the potential. But here's what you ask your politician. It's about time for America to put its thumb on the scale of transforming the global economy to be more useful, to uplift the human condition by bringing lower cost energy, lower cost information, and lower cost resources to everybody on the planet, delivered to you by the good old US of A.
That's great. I will get AOC on the phone right now to get on that.
Here's what they'll say. They'll say, well, we have people that are hungry in America. Why put money into space when we can't even feed our own people? And it's to miss the entire point that when you build a common infrastructure that can deliver this kind of energy and resources to every point on the planet for the same price or less than a truck, a ship, or an airplane, because there's no friction in space. And the cost of delivering to any point on the planet is the same as delivering it to any other point on the planet. You now start transforming, you're able to now feed those people and give them water and shelter affordably to millions of people, not just the people lucky enough to live in a big city next to a power plant or a manufacturing facility or a concrete plant. It takes away the geography problem of haves and have-nots. And America can lead that. The rest of the world is waiting and watching and hoping. This president gets it. He needs Congress to help him. He needs us as the American people to say, okay, the jig is up. We know the technology is there. We know we can uplift the human condition. We can put Americans to work, and we will lead the rest of the world into the golden age.
I love that. And it seems like making these things more accessible kind of will eventually enable regular people to help themselves. It'll make it more attainable, where you're less and less relying on these big government structures, where, eventually regular people can start stepping in and becoming a part of it, and that'll all snowball.
Yeah. So why don't you do me a favor? Let's go ahead and give everybody their homework assignment. So why don't you bring up the book that they can read? Again, last show I brought up a book that was written in 1995 for intentional reasons. This book I bring up as well for some of the same things, but this book is not available on Kindle. So most of the audience will order it and read it in a night, but this one you'll have to order a hardcover or soft cover paperback, and it may take a while to get to you. But it is, again, another one of these books that will help you understand what is out there that most people don't understand.
I love it. And I think, okay, yes, I have it here. If you could pull it up. I don't have
I got it. Here we go.
Capabilities in here.
Everybody can see Mining the Sky is the name of the book. Okay. And, the goal here is just to, and then there's another book that they already know about. If they go back to the last show on resources, you'll see the book that I proposed for that one. And that one is available on, Kindle or, digital media, but this one's not, but it's a damn good book that helps you understand what we're talking about here. It may sound weird, but God gave us an infinite universe of resources. And believe me, let's take one asteroid, one of those metal asteroids that has $500 trillion worth of gold, silver, and platinum on it. Okay. Talk about an incentive for investors to go after. But then, it has its negative side where you flood the market. There's so much damn gold, but at least you can make your beautiful buildings. You can gild your house in gold because it's so damn cheap.
Well, that's how you get Trump interested, because right. He loves gold. Yeah.
But here's the beautiful thing is with the fuel in space, water, you can now drag an asteroid to the Earth and mine it. And now you have an infinite. You have this train of asteroids from the asteroid belt, billions and billions of asteroids, all stuffed with all the minerals we need. And now you can do what Jeff Bezos was famous for saying many years ago. We can turn the Earth into a park, and all our heavy industry is off Earth, where it doesn't pollute. Yes. And as long as, but I want to be kind to Mother Nature and human nature. So I don't want to scar the surface of the moon. I don't want this view of the moon to change. But an asteroid is a dark object nobody can see. You can mine it until it's gone. And when it's gone, you can drag another asteroid to replace it and mine that one until it's gone. God has given an infinite well of energy, information, and resources in space that once we build the infrastructure, we can tap into for infinity.
I've been looking at this week, just different types of asteroids. There's C type with the carbon, S type with like iron, nickel, and kind of stony meteorites, and then the M type that I was mentioning before with the iron and nickel, and that'd be great for steel. You just go between the three of those. That's everything you need to build everything on planet Earth. And I love that idea. I wasn't even thinking about that, about stopping the scarring of planet Earth. Like I was saying, I live in a place where everything has to be brought in. Yeah. Technically, this is full of resources right here, and we have to bring them in. Even our gas is high, even though Alaska has all this oil. We have to send it out to be refined and then send it back. And that's not exactly what we're talking about, but to be able to preserve this place without having to use it would be so incredible.
Yeah, it's true. So now we have a choice. Okay, God has given us the earth. We need to be good stewards of that earth. God has given us the heavens. We need to be good stewards of the heavens. But the heavens have this magic, infinite source of energy and resources. Why not tap into it? Why not utilize what God has put right under our nose or above our heads? So now, as we think about the critical questions we should be asking, so we don't get hoodwinked by evil players that want to use technology as a weapon against us. It's always a double-edged sword. What are the key questions in your mind that our truth seekers should be asking as we start watching this revolution unfold, with Elon Musk breaking the glass ceiling into space, and now the rest of the companies rushing in to build an infrastructure and an economy that can deliver to Earth and to space energy, information, and resources in abundance? What do we need to watch out for? What are the questions we need to ask?
Yeah, I think the question for me would be, how do we keep it from being cut off? Like again, here in Alaska, there's all these resources, but it doesn't belong to Alaska. The United States government took it over, locked it down, and Trump's opening that up now. But for the longest time, it was just hoarded by them and cut off from your regular average citizen. How do we keep these big players from doing that with everything in space and just cutting out the common man?
That is such a great point, because this journey needs to include the democratization and the delegation of the authority and the control of all the essentials of life to the individual. And so you don't want to centralize things if you don't have to. So this is one of the great questions you ask. Okay, we're going to deliver energy from space to Earth. How do I design it so that I have control? And the energy issue is going to be a multitude of sources. It's not just going to be solar power from space. That just happens to be an infinite source of the sun that is low cost and can be delivered to any point on the planet without building local infrastructure on the terrestrial level. But this is an excellent question, because our water systems are centralized. Somebody could poison them or turn it off, and we're dead men walking in 3 days. We can't have that. Mm-hmm. So this is why this question is so important. That's why, like, the Genesis Systems company that I was a part of delivers you a water cube that's the size of your air conditioner that draws water out of the air using solar panels. And now you're totally independent of the government for your water. You don't have to rely on a well that could go dry or have forever metals and contaminants in it. You have this beautiful triple distilled water from the air that God has cleansed through the hydraulic cycle. That has to apply to all 8 of these essentials. And that's air, water, food, shelter, information, energy, transportation, and healthcare. If we can democratize those essentials of life so that it is in the control of every person to never let anybody else take it away from them, we've got a winning solution. And there are engineers doing that. You go back to my energy podcast on Space Revolution, and we talk about zero-point energy. We talk about some of the other energy solutions that will be part of the space energy solution as well.
That is the most exciting thing going on right now on Earth. Yeah. And you know what? My other question, we don't have to answer it, but just a rhetorical question is, how do I become a guinea pig for some of this stuff? Because, man, it's exciting.
Yeah, well, if you go to Amazon, you can order a water cube from Genesis Systems and have it delivered to Alaska and try it out. It's in the beta phase, so they're going to ask you to try to break it because they're trying to make it resilient. But they're already selling it to the special forces. They take it with them to deployed locations where they don't want to rely on the water from the locals, or they don't have water in some of the islands in the Indo-Pacific region. So you can be a guinea pig if you want. Just sign up. And awesome. And for the rest of this stuff, I think it's going to break so fast once we get government out of the way and lobbyists that try to perpetuate the past to keep them wealthy. I think you're going to see the space revolution accelerate, and you and I will be able to go up into space. And if you're a flat earther, I respect your critical mind of asking questions and making it be proved. But the way I'm going to prove it to you is not argue with you. I'm going to take you up with me. We're going to get to go around, and you're going to see African continent go under your feet. You're going to see the Asian continent go under your feet, and you're going to come back around to your hometown after you've gone around the globe once and land in your backyard. Let's do that.
I'm down, dude. I will pretend to be a flat earther if I get to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. And are there any rants and or comments that you've seen cascade by on our show that you want to talk about, Brad?
One I kind of mentioned was from Abby, saying how we're getting ready to build with this technology be available to regular people within 5 years. And it sounds like at very least the water technology is. And I find that super exciting. And I did see a comment, I'm trying to scroll here, from our own Matthew Trump. It's I don't think it's less of a question, but he made a cool point that I think you like, where he says the biggest source of mercury in the oceans poisoning the fish and us is due to artisanal gold mining in Africa and Asia, and that would disappear if you started moving these things off the planet. I think that's
right. Now, the industrial age of mining the earth has created a lot of the forever metals that we're talking about. And that's one of the things we can avoid. So there's so many great ideas that come with this. But again, I want to keep the shows, bite-sized, let people do their homework, and we come back to it. And over time, we'll eat this whole elephant and dive down deep enough to really understand what's coming.
Amen.
All right, Brad, thank you. And God bless everybody that's listening. And remember, you have to be a participant, so get out there and vote and demand of your politicians policies and laws that are consistent with your values and the values that we have enshrined in our Constitution from the Bible.
Amen to that.
Okay, thanks. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
I don't say this lightly. This lotion changes people.
My knuckles would actually start to crack. Started using the soft disclosure lotion, and I am very impressed. Even within just a few days, I've noticed a tremendous difference.
That's not a script. That's what happens when something actually works.
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, that line keeps coming up. Because when you don't use it, your skin starts acting up.
Every single ingredient in soft disclosure is intentionally chosen. There's no filler ingredients. It is not like this BS product where they have a bunch of ingredients. Every ingredient listed is for a purpose.
Over 65-star reviews for the lotion alone. Not influencers, not actors, just people whose skin finally shut up. Soft disclosure lotion. Once you try it, you'll understand why people won't stop talking about it. Visit softdisclosure.com and use code Badlands and get 10% off.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.